And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud sponsor of the SARA Rail Conference 2025, powering progress, connecting economies. Good evening to you. It's 9 minutes after 6 on The Money Show. I'm Stephen Grootes. On a day I think many of us, certainly myself, if just speaking for me, will remember for the passing of Tsidi Madia, and I'll make some comments about her and share some memories about her in just a moment. Such a strong force in so many different ways. On the markets, I've been trying to sort of think about whether money still matters on a day like this, and of course, I know that it does, and it does to you, and it does to your family, and it does to everyone around you. All of these things are all linked to each other, as you know. But I think what we're going to remember today on the markets is that today was the day Capitec achieved a higher JSE valuation than First Rand. And there were many people who thought that something like this would never, ever happen. It's been a very interesting day for Capitec in some ways, if you look at the deep history of it. But essentially, it really does tell you, and the story of Capitec, depending on which version you believe, but the story of Capitec is really about riding a wave of change and doing it more quickly than anyone else. And that's what Capitec has really, I suppose, been able to do, and to become our most valuable bank in terms of market capitalization. It is, no matter how you look at it, an absolutely extraordinary achievement. There are many people involved in it, and one of them today in the news for something else. Yanni Mouton and his foundation putting in a bid to buy the Curro group. Well, we'll hear both sides of that in a little while. The idea, as I understand it, is not necessarily to provide just fee-free schools or free schools, but to take all the profits that Curro makes, any kind of cent that it makes in any kind of profit, and invest that into more schools. So basically the idea over time would be to have more schools like Curro schools in more rural areas. And I suppose what you would say is the real aim is to provide many more children in many more places with as much greater possible, the greatest possible access to a quality education. So something very interesting, something very important, I think, to do, and we'll get into that in a few moments. We'll talk also to Philip Morris International, the tobacco company. We'll hear from them in about 5 minutes from now. They're calling for a scientific approach to the regulation of smoking. Now, if you ask me, and this is just my view, but if you ask me, if you speak to a tobacco company or an alcohol company or a gambling company or even a car company, and they say they want a scientific approach, what they really want, to quote a well-known song, is they want the ability to sell their products with as little hindrance or as little regulation as possible. So I'm always a little cynical, but we'll hear them out. You can tell me afterwards how you feel about it one way or another. I'm sure this is about e-cigarettes in some way, shape or form, and that's just my, unfortunately, very cynical view. Also tonight, we will be talking to the Bidcorp CEO. It's a global food producer. They produce food mainly for the restaurant market. One of the questions I'm fascinated by, and we'll speak to their CEO in about half an hour from now, is we see so much talk at the moment, partly because of what Process has been doing around the home delivery market. How is the actual eating out market doing? In other words, and we're talking around the world here because Bidcorp operates pretty much everywhere except North America. And I noticed in their results, we operate in all continents except for North America and Antarctica. Okay, well, I'm glad you were very specific about Antarctica. Thank you. But just to get a sort of dipstick in how that market is going generally, do human beings, despite AI and everything else, actually still enjoy eating out? And the evidence clearly is that they do, which means that they're also enjoying being with people. And that surely is quite an important thing, perhaps something to cling to as you think about some of the other awful news that we've had today. We will also hear from Tim Akinnusi. He'll be a shapeshifter, someone who was bored in a corporate job. I'll ask him for his advice for someone you might be bored in a corporate job. What do you think about it? And we'll hear from him on The Money Show as well tonight. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702. If you were asked about how to regulate nicotine and tobacco, what would you do? How would you do it? Would you just let the cigarette companies do whatever they wanted to do? It's a free market. Would you say, actually, no, we're not going to let you sell an addictive substance? If you say that, what about alcohol, for example? All sorts of arguments that go along the lines of all of this. Good to hear from you tonight.
The Money Show.
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
And DSTV channel 856.
Well, I've been thinking over the last few hours, as I'm sure you have too, about City Media. And if you've been listening to this radio station for a long time, if you're a part of 702 Land, if you're a part of us at Cape Talk, you're a part of our community, and we are part of you, and you are part of us. And you will know she played, I think, such a big role in you, such a strong voice, a questioning voice. And I'll remember City as a voice determined to get to the truth, a voice also, I think, that was really fascinated to get to our politics. And I know you will have your own memories of her reporting, of her comments, of her podcast, of her commentary. You would have heard her on The Money Show quite recently. She was in the Oval Office quite recently. She was on Fox News and CNN. Someone who really was just exceptional. Let me just share one or two of my own thoughts. And I remember spending time with her for a whole week in Richards Bay at a South African Communist Party conference back in 2012. And I don't know if you remember back where you were in 2012. She was already then a very strong voice behind the scenes at EWN. And I remember one night with the group of political journalists, with a political party spokesperson, she must have been the youngest person there. And yet, there she was, sharing gossip and jokes and talking. But more than that, she had a real interest, a real fascination, but also real information, real facts. She knew what was going on. She understood what was going on. And she knew why it was important. And she only grew from that night. She went on to other forms of journalism, came back to us here at EWN. And one of the things that I think I'll remember from a news point of view is how often she was able to lead the news agenda. She was the person speaking to this person or to that person. She was the one who was getting news out of it. Now, let me just tell you, it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to do it as consistently, as ably, as strongly, as well as City Media did. It really isn't. And the fact that she could do that, I think, was one of the reasons, one of the things that just made her so strong at what she did. I also think, and I need to tell you this, that the City you heard on air, the City you knew, was the City I knew. She was the same person. She was the same person no matter what she was doing. I think that too actually was part of her genius. If you loved her on air, you would have loved her off air. If she irritated you from time to time on air, maybe she would have done the same off air. But every time she spoke, you would have done what I did when I spoke to her about politics. You would have shut up and listened to what she had to say, because that's what I did, because I knew it was the right thing. I knew I was going to learn from this. I was going to come away with a thought, an insight, something I didn't have before I started the conversation with her. I think without City Media, and I found it quite hard to sort of say that, but I think without her, our journalism, and to a large extent our politics, would actually have been very different. I think it would be much poorer. I think we would know a lot less. We would simply know fewer facts. I think, though, she also had something, she could do something that's not been something I can do. She'd been able to get under the skin of politicians so that you know something about them, their personality, what they're almost like off air. She did that so well, particularly through politricking. So we would know less about the personalities without her. And I think all of those things are very important. I think we would understand less than we do now because of her. Let's listen now to City Media.
Beyond politics.
CD, I'm not going anywhere.
This is Politricking
On record, CD.
with City Media on EWN.
Hello, welcome to Politricking with myself, TD Madia. I know you don't want to talk about certain parts of history because you feel they've been dissected, but actually with that, I do have questions about things that have happened in history. Do you feel, I'm talking about Marikana specifically, that there was an attempt to scapegoat Marikana and put it just on your shoulders? There was an attempt to look at you, and I think you were relatively new when Marikana happened, and leave it on your shoulders.
Days.
Exactly. Did you feel the sense that there was an attempt to put everything on your shoulders?
CD, I wasn't going to talk about that, but let me start off by saying So much has been said about this incident. And I will preface it by saying, everyone has a right to their opinion. But the one thing I can tell you is that I own my truth about that matter. The debate that has been given over the years, that there is a directive that comes from a national commissioner, if indeed that criminality has happened in terms of the act, arrest that national commission.
You haven't answered my question, though.
What is your question?
Did you feel there was an attempt to use you as a scapegoat?
Absolutely,
what happened?
Yes. And the day I write my book, you'll find a lot of scapegoat in that book.
You know, what I'm tired of is being promised books by so many people. Everyone promises us books.
This is Politricking with Sidi Madia on EWN.
I'm joined in studio by Matthew Sposa. He's got a book out called Witness to Power, a political memoir.
Becky, I was in the NEC and know the build-up towards his removal. I wrote the motion to remove him because of the reasons which were known, which were being debated for almost 5 hours by the NEC.
Even in losing the election in Polokwane, people regret Zuma. They don't regret not backing Mbeki.
I don't regret nothing. Because our assessment was that Mbeki was on a rampage against his comrade. He was. If he gave people a sword to stab him with.
Yeah.
Sidi Madia, just somehow important, I think, to hear her voice again tonight. Let's hear from Mo Philip, who's phoned in. Mo, good day to you. I don't know how you're feeling tonight.
Devastated, I tell you. Sidi was she had a voice that you just know it was Sidi that's asking the questions. And I consider her to be the gorilla of reporters and journalists, especially when we were recently at the White House. And I suddenly heard a voice, and I just knew it was Sidi. Wow, Sidi is questioning President Trump. That sort of scenario. To me, she was the gorilla. And I'm devastated to hear the news.
Mo Philip, thank you for sharing that with us. And I think fearless is one of the words that we will remember Sidi Madia by.
7:02. Stephen is on the Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
23 minutes now after 6. Well, a call today from Philip Morris, South Africa, the tobacco company, for our parliament to adopt what they call a science-based policy towards the regulation of smoking. You know, of course, there's a big debate at the moment around how e-cigarettes or vapes should be treated. Themba Matabula is PMI's Director for External Affairs for Southern Africa. Themba, good evening. What do you mean by a science-based policy? What do you really want from government?
Good evening and good evening to the 702 listeners. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, what we mean by science, applying science, into the bill, it's simply saying that we are in a better position today, that we've got a lot of evidence, scientific evidence, that shows that there are in the market proven products that are less harmful than continuing with smoking, which is the most harmful way of consuming nicotine through burning. And what we are proposing is for the bill to recognize this evidence and implement a risk-proportionate regulation that will recognize the difference in the risks and benefits that are provided by these products.
Okay, so I understand the scientific rationale as you describe it, but basically you're selling e-cigarettes and you want to be able to do that with as little regulation as possible. Would that be too cynical?
Not at all, Stephen. We fully support regulation for the nicotine market. A risk-proportionate approach, actually what it allows regulators to do in this case is that you then look at the most harmful products, for example, combustible products like cigarettes, and you impose stricter measures on those. And what you then do is you appropriately regulate the products that are less harmful or proven to be less harmful. And once you do that, you create a situation where you are encouraging a behavioral change, because what we are dealing with here is behavior. You want to reduce the harms that are caused by the most harmful products. So you would facilitate the move for smokers to transition away from the most harmful product to those that are less harmful. And in that way, Stephen, you literally address the bill's core objective, which is to reduce smoking prevalence in the country. And our position is that this bill should be that opportunity to accelerate the reduction in smoking prevalence in South Africa by embracing multiple pathways to reduce the harms.
Okay. I mean, you make the point that the best option is for smokers to quit nicotine and tobacco altogether. I mean, if that's the best option, shouldn't governments be working towards that? And you could do it, I mean, you wouldn't do it tomorrow. That would never work. Obviously, we found that out during the pandemic. But you would do it, say, over 20 years or give yourself a 50-year goal, for example. And you could do that perhaps by having not particularly loose regulations around e-cigarettes, but you can do lots of things at the same time. And shouldn't government be aiming for what you say is the best option, to quit nicotine and tobacco altogether?
So I agree, Stephen. We've had this conversation a lot of times. We've been here before. We know now with evidence, and if regulators even agree, that the quitting programs that we have are not as effective, so they are not able to facilitate faster declines as expected by everyone. And our message is clear. Quitting programs should continue. NRT or nicotine replacement therapies programs should continue, but not everyone accesses them. Not everyone goes that route. So what we are proposing is a complementary approach that still helps people to reduce harms. The main purpose or objective of public health is to reduce harms to individual and to population. And once you approach that, once you adopt that strategy that allows you to give people options and the tools to reduce these harms, you are ultimately leading them on a path to quitting completely. So we do see an opportunity to complement the efforts on the part of government to help people quit. It's not a contradiction. It's actually a complementary strategy.
Are there other examples of countries who have regulated where they've managed to dramatically bring down harmful smoking?
We have several countries that have managed to do that, and we used the opportunity to share those examples with the committee yesterday. One country that comes to mind, Stephen, is Sweden, which is virtually smoke-free, and a country that is regarded smoke-free by the WHO standards. It's a country that has less than 5% smoking prevalence, and Sweden has achieved that primarily by adopting this harm reduction approach. So they use snus, which is an oral smokeless tobacco product. It does not burn, it does not combust. They also now are using oral nicotine pouches, so they contain nicotine, but they have no tobacco at all. And these are the group of smoke-free products or non-combustible products that have been proven to reduce the harms from smoking. Just to mention the main points, Stephen, we all know and we all agree that the most harmful way of consuming nicotine is through burning of cigarettes. It's through burning of tobacco, which is mainly cigarettes. So a lot of people traditionally have enjoyed tobacco through the most harmful way. So once you start to introduce a better alternative that allows people, and we need to acknowledge that there are those people who will continue to enjoy nicotine, and our responsibility becomes how do we move them to better alternatives that can reduce harms at an individual level, but also at a population level. And Sweden has done that, for example. We also have other countries that are on this journey, New Zealand and the UK. And when you look at how they have done it, again, it was implementing a risk-proportionate regulatory approach that says, let's treat the most harmful products with harsher sanctions, measures, and then allow the less harmful products to be accessible, to be affordable to smokers. One thing that we need to make clear is that these products should not be accessed by those that are underage and youth. And those are the measures that we provided to the Portfolio Committee yesterday.
Themba Matabula, thanks very much indeed. The Director of External Affairs for Southern Africa for Philip Morris International.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Chris Stewart is Portfolio Manager at 91. Chris, good evening. What do you make of the offer by the Moulton Foundation, or the Moulton Foundation, I should say, to buy all the shares in Curro?
I think it's a stroke of genius, to be honest. To take the Jannie Mouton Stichting, which is a public benefit organization trust that was set up with various assets, the major assets of which being Capitec shares as well as some PSG Financial Services shares, set up as a public benefit organization originally. And what they are proposing to do is effectively use the Capitec shares, the PSG Financial Services shares, and some cash that they have currently to take out Curro, the private school, the listed private school company, take it out in its entirety. The trust is currently a small shareholder. They own about 3.4% of Curro at the moment. They are proposing to Curro shareholders that Curro shareholders will get Capitec shares and PSG Financial Services shares in return for their Curro shares. The trust will then focus on owning 100% of Curro, which will then be run as a non-profit company, which will, in addition to enabling the school to continue with its education mandate, it will be able to continue with its education mandate in a non-profit manner, which has certain benefits in enabling it to compete against other schools, private schools that are run as non-profit organizations. There are certain benefits in terms of the payment of rates and taxes and other factors, which would enable Curro to compete more effectively. And also, I think, will enable the trust to focus very much on creating a legacy of building affordable quality education for South Africans without necessarily having to pursue a profit motive in doing so.
And very quickly, Chris, Bidcorp, obviously trading in a difficult environment pretty much around the world.
Yeah, a difficult environment. I mean, the results, I thought, I think a couple of analysts might be a little bit aggrieved seeing the share selling off 3.5% today. The results look to me approximately in line. The revenue might have been a little bit light, but the profit numbers look okay. Australia, a little bit disappointing. The UK was okay. Europe, a little bit better than expected. Strong balance sheet. This is a business that continues to have a strong balance sheet. It continues to grow both organically and inorganically, highlighting 4 new bolt-on acquisitions that they've already made in the new financial year since the 30th of June. And if we can see a little bit of an uptick in food inflation globally, looking at the latest inflation data out of the UK, we're certainly seeing it in that jurisdiction. That's probably quite good for that business as well.
Chris Stewart, thanks so much. Portfolio Manager at 91.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Well, you heard the conversation a few moments ago about tobacco. I'm afraid to say, slightly cynical views, but that's just the way it is. Good to hear from you this evening on the subject.
Hi, Stevens. I'm not sure what that guest of ours is talking about when he talks about enjoying tobacco and all that. Because cigarette smokers are the most, I would say careless, but also very inconsiderate. They never want to smoke in their own corner, in their own car. They'll always open the car window. They'll always come to people when they're smoking. So there's nothing to enjoy with smoking. Just ban this thing completely, because they smoke and come closer to us, and in the end we get affected. They are responsible for most of the cancers and lung disease in this world. So just ban the tobacco altogether completely. This is Jack from Amaskara.
Good evening. Njabulo here in Randfontein. I'm a teacher, and I can tell you now that we have a very massive problem of vaping in schools, and it's growing, it's becoming worse, and no one is really reaching out to the youth at that age to say to them, don't even attempt to get into this. Vaping has been seen as something innocent, and children as young as grade 8 enter high school already vaping. So in other words, they started while they were in primary school. And it's seen as something that is not as harmful simply because they view it as it's flavored smoke. And there aren't real programs that are really within the reach of the children to be exposed to and them to experience and have knowledge on the impact of vaping on them. So maybe there are those things that exist, but they're not within reach to the children at their level. We need more of that.
Yeah, no, thank you for those. I mean, I did smile slightly to myself when he said that people will enjoy tobacco. Addiction's a thing. And I sort of didn't want to be unfair, but addiction is a thing. And isn't that really the story around tobacco? It's addictive. It's not that hard to kind of work this out. Your views on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. 16 minutes now to 7.
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
Well, confirmation today of what I think will be a deal, which I suppose is pretty rare. So a trust is offering to buy a company that is listed and turn it into a non-profit group. The company is Curro. They run schools in most parts of the country. The trust is the Yanni Mouton Foundation. It was created by the founder of Capitec Bank. And Curro today reporting their total revenue was up 4.7%, has confirmed its total number of learners has declined slightly. Well, we'll hear from Jan Mouton, the deputy chair of the Yanni Mouton Foundation, in just a moment. But let's first hear from Cobus Loubser, who is the CEO at Curro Holdings. Cobus, good evening and thanks for your time. I understand that you as management are supporting this deal. What's the vision for the future of Curro? Why are you backing the deal?
Yep, Steve, thanks for having me on the show and for taking an interest in Curro. I think maybe just to reverse a step here, this is an offer that's made. It is subject to board review, to regulatory approval, and ultimately to shareholder approval. And so I think from management's perspective, what are our observations? We see an entity that is a public benefit organization and is not a competitor. We see an entity that is passionate about South Africa and about driving things that are good and supporting, and particularly education. And they've made I think a significant offer relative to the premium relative to where the market price was at. So I guess from our perspective as management, it's an organization that appears to be very much aligned with our mission to extend education to many more learners in South Africa. We often describe ourselves as a force for good. And so I think there's a natural alignment on that front. And I think practically it may enable us to accelerate some of the things we dream about and some of the ideals we have for South Africa's learners. So from that perspective, it could be quite a transformative transaction.
There'll probably be some people listening to you speak and wondering, well, if Curro becomes non-profit, does that mean my kid can go to Curro for free? And I can completely understand that. The desire for education is incredibly strong. That would probably not be sustainable. So I presume the idea would still be to charge fees?
Absolutely. And I think the way to sort of understand it would be to say that Curro over many years has blended the concept of perhaps profit and purpose. So it's not profit or purpose, but it's this concept of generating a yield on shareholder capital to be able to create facilities and to be able to extend that to learners, often in communities where they would never have otherwise received that. So I think what we do is we blend that through the professionalism of our education. So in this particular instance, what happens is that the surplus that may be generated by the school portfolio would ostensibly be reinvested in either the current schools insofar as facilities or in new schools and or in potentially things like scholarships for excellence and so on. So I think from that perspective, a very interesting, and that's why I say it may accelerate the opportunity set for education, because it may allow us to, for instance, take the 93 million of dividends that we paid in this first half, the 116 million that we spent on share buybacks, and to take that 200-odd million rand and deploy it differently, and deploy it quite directly in education.
I do need to ask one or two questions of your results today, and your enrollment, as you told us last week, was slightly down over the course of the year, down by 1.4%. Why do you think that is?
Look, I think it's been a tough and kind of economic sort of stage. I mean, interest rates shot up quite rapidly. I think it caught a lot of families a little bit off guard and off balance, and it's only really been kind of tapering back a little bit this year. So we started this year with about 1,000 learners less than where we were at the same time last year, and I think that's kind of what's played out. So from our perspective, I think a resilient performance to take a little bit less learners, grow revenue by 5%, and then generate 10% more cash out of our operations, even though our earnings were flat and substantially the same. And I think that's that's kind of a testament to the financial discipline and the performance of the team in areas like working capital and otherwise.
I mean, I accept all of that, and obviously that must be the case, but and I hate to be this guy, but Cobus, one of your competitors had their results out this week, and they grew their enrollment. They have more children in their schools than they did a year ago, and when I asked them about this, they suggested to us on the Money Show that, in fact, their market share is growing. And I do have to ask if that's at your expense.
Look, it's entirely possible, and I think it's difficult to talk for other companies, and I think what's important to appreciate is that this set of results is absolutely like for like. In other words, it's the same schools and the same schools last year. And I think, much like in retail and other consumer businesses, one must appreciate the expansion underneath, indicators. But be that as it may, I think from our perspective, we are very confident that the kind of offering that we're providing, and the kind of the sort of academic credentials and the holistic development in sport and culture is compelling and will drive learner growth in the future. And we see this as a moment where the economic cycle is a little bit against us. But to be fair, there are still nearly 72,000 learners who are supporting us, and there's still nearly 15,000 learners that joined the organization this year, and that is still a very, very significant sort of group of families and learners where it's incumbent on us to provide the best possible education we can, and to delight them every day with their sort of journey into adulthood and into being kind of citizens in South Africa.
Cobus Loubser, thanks very much indeed, the CEO at Curro Holdings. Let's hear now from the Deputy Chair of the Jannie Moulton Foundation, Jan Moulton. Jan, my apologies, we've kept you on hold for a very long time. Good evening to you. What is your vision for the future of Curro?
Good evening. Our vision for Curro is, after this acquisition, to build Curro out as a public benefit organization supporting education in South Africa. So this is, in essence, a 7.2 billion donation to the South African public. The schools will have no shareholder after this, as public benefit organizations don't have shareholders, and we will run it to make South Africa a better country through educating children in a quality way.
So people would still pay for an education, but you would invest that into more education. You would basically keep improving the facilities and, crucially, I think, taking your facilities to places that don't currently have them. So there'll be a lot more quality education in, say, more rural areas.
Exactly. That is the plan, yeah. The fee schools will still be fee-paying. It's many schools are actually run in South Africa on that model. It's a private school, but it's a public benefit organization. For example, Somerset College or St. Cyprian's or Bishops. So all the profits or surplus that the school makes is reinvested in bursaries or improving the school grounds.
It's a fascinating idea. It comes with all sorts of advantages. It means their properties are taxed in different ways, for example. It does mean, and it's quite a strange sort of thing, but you have to make the offer public. It means that the share price goes up, which may or may not be a little bit frustrating. How long do you think it'll all take before you know how this is going to pan out? It really is an idea the likes of which I've never heard before. Quite something.
Yeah, it is the biggest donation in South Africa at 7.2 billion to date. We couldn't find a bigger one. And the next steps is shareholders will have to vote on this transaction, and there's some other regulatory processes that have to run the way, for example, Competition Commission. But we're not a competitor, we are a public benefit organization, so we don't foresee any hurdles, and shareholders are getting a 60% premium, so hopefully they are very happy with this premium and vote in favor of the transaction and vote in favor of this donation.
quite a thing. Jan, thank you very much indeed. Good luck with the transaction.
Thanks so much, Stephen.
Jan Milton is the Deputy Chair of the Jannie Milton Foundation.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud sponsor of the SARA Rail Conference 2025, powering progress, connecting economies.
Well, I was looking today, one of the stories that we sort of saw, I think, on Business Live, around a story that the Competition Commission has worked out or reached an agreement with Westbank and Toyota. And essentially, Toyota and Westbank, so we're talking about car finance, were accused of collusive conduct. It's one of those things, you know, you see it all the time, don't you, where there's an agreement on a fine and you don't really know what happened or how bad the conduct was, and all you've got to go on is the amount of the fine. Well, 30 million rand sounds to me like someone somewhere had a pretty strong case, or someone somewhere was a little concerned that, in fact, the Competition Commission did have a strong case. And as I understand it, essentially it meant that Toyota Financial Services basically became sort of part of Westbank. Westbank would be the only people operating out of those Toyota dealers. There is a lot to say about how car financing works and about how careful you need to be when you go in to buy a car. Make sure you've checked all of your options.
7:02.
7:02.
Stephen is on the Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, the global food service and technology group Bidcorp announcing today its headline earnings per share up by 9.6% in rand terms. Headline earnings up by 6.5% in constant currency. Their trading profit up 6.4%. Bernard Berson is the CEO at Bidcorp. Bernard, good evening. Thank you for your time. We keep talking in South Africa about the tough economic climate. You're suggesting, in fact, that in many of the places you operate, they're having the same problem.
Well, absolutely. The world is a volatile, tough place at the moment, and economic conditions are tough around the world. So, yeah, South Africa is not alone, and most economies are struggling at this point in time.
Despite that, you're still trying to grow. You're investing in more distribution infrastructure. You've bought several new companies. I mean, is this a good time to buy? Are you expecting growth at some point?
Well, we are growing. We still had real revenue growth of 4.3% in constant currency, plus some acquisition growth on top of that. So, notwithstanding the fact that the economy is pretty average out there, we've got a lot of confidence in the business, in our model, in the industry we operate, and we'll continue to invest for growth and deliver on that.
There's been a lot of commentary about the home delivery market, and I think that's because of one of the big international companies that's run kind of out of South Africa. But you operate primarily, I suppose, in the eating out market. You supply restaurants and things like that. Is that market internationally still going to grow? People going out, despite all of the talk about people eating in, the market for people eating out, spending time with each other face to face in another environment, that's going to grow around the world. Humans have been doing that for thousands of years, and I kind of think we'll never stop.
I agree with you, and maybe I'm old school. The home delivery's got a place, but it also has to find its economics and its tipping point. But people do go out. The fundamentals in the market that we operate remain positive, and there is growth. There's more money in developed markets now. There's more food dollar being spent out of home than in home. So we're part of that, and we're optimistic about it.
We can see global trade is being disrupted, and you operate your companies sort of independently of each other pretty much, is my understanding of your group. You obviously know your group much better than I do. Do you believe that might protect you to some extent from what looks like a lot of global disruption that may come, that in fact you'll be able to manage pretty much as you have before, despite the difficulties in the environment? Let me put it like that.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, our businesses are decentralized. Each country is autonomous, and we procure product from where it's correct to procure product from. So when something is disrupted, generally you can switch to a different market. No one place has a monopoly on the provision of food. So we have been relatively immune from the disruption. It's not to say the disruption isn't there, but we're relatively immune, and we can switch our procurement accordingly.
Bernard Berson, thanks very much indeed. CEO at Bidcorp. I really do appreciate the time. You with the Money Show, 7 o'clock.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud sponsor of the SARA Rail Conference 2025, powering progress, connecting economies. Good evening. Welcome to the second hour of the program. I'm Stephen Grootes, 9 minutes after 7, the time on the Money Show. And of course, I think still lingering in so many of my thoughts during the conversations that we have is the passing of Tsidi Medea, and I still can't really believe that it sort of happened. And I realize that life must go on and does go on, and that there are many, many things we need to consider, and money is one of them, and AI is one of them, and we need to celebrate, as we will celebrate with Tim Akinnusi as well, the achievements of the living. But I think still Tsidi Medea very much with me in all sorts of ways as I talk to you tonight, and I imagine in many ways she's kind of with you too as you listen through the evening, and I'm sure there'll be more tributes. Aubrey, as you know, is someone who really has a very deep and strong feelings and has been through his own very tough time, as we all have actually over the last 3 weeks in 702 land. So there's a lot to sort of talk about and think about and feel as well, but a lot to talk about in the world of money too. We'll talk about AI in a moment. We'll hear from Wendy Nola. It's an astonishing thing. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but what happens if your cell phone gets stolen and through the one-touch notifications, through the OTPs or whatever they're called, the SMSs that you get, what happens if someone gets access to those? I think it's a really interesting story. She's been looking at that. You'll hear from her in a few moments on that. And then, of course, Tim Akinnusi, the founder of a company which is really making big changes, MortgageMarket. Hearing from him from 7:30 this evening. We'll hear his story. Someone who was very bored in a corporate job and then decided to go and do something else. And gosh, wasn't it a big something else?
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
Well, I don't know if you've ever said to a friend, a colleague, a person you know, I'll do this or I'll do that, and basically made a promise, and then in fact not lived up to it. And sometimes this can be really important. There's been this story, it's been running for quite a long time, and I don't know if you ever have thought to yourself, how much is a rib worth? If you believe in the literal interpretation of the Bible, well, one rib is worth quite a lot. I mean, without it, only half of us would be here. But if you believe differently, you might think that a rib is not worth that much, or a verbal agreement is, what's the old line, worth the paper it's written on. In other words, nothing. Well, there's been an arbitration process involving Spur. Yes, Spur. You can get quite good ribs at Spur, I understand. And they were going to go, and this is where the verbal agreement comes in. They basically said, well, they signed. They didn't sign. They said verbally, we will do a deal with you, with one of their suppliers. They reneged on that, and the arbitrator has found in favor of their supplier. In other words, and this is an argument about ribs, remember, they have been found to be in the wrong, all because of a verbal agreement. It does happen. It doesn't happen very often. Maybe there was a recording, maybe there was other evidence, maybe there was CCTV. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But it does just remind you that actually, in life, you do have to live up to your promises. You do actually have to do what you say you are going to do. It is critically important. And I thought that this story was a very interesting reminder of the importance of living up to your politicians and the value of a rib.
The Money Show.
Business Unusual.
Business Unusual is brought to you by Business Outsurance. Visit outsurance.co.za to switch and save today. Well, so often we talk about the fears of artificial intelligence, and we start to worry about, will it take my job? Will there actually be anything for me to do? All of that. Well, Keegan DaCosta is an AI utilization specialist from Too Many Robots. They're a fractional AI agency. And Keegan, I think you're not as scared of AI as the rest of us, or certainly me. I suppose one of the questions is around the sort of working culture that we have as we go into this new era. And maybe in a way, that is one of the reasons we're so scared of what could happen or what is happening or what may happen.
That's correct. And the work culture that we have at the moment it's rewards quantity over substance. So the fear shouldn't be of, is AI going to take our jobs, or someone using AI is going to take our jobs. That's unfortunately old news now. And it is true. It has taken people's jobs. But the real fear now is using it to create mediocre work. When we have this culture that is a legacy culture that has been designed to create productivity and quantity over substance, when you plug AI into that, we're just going to create faster mediocrity. And that's what the real fear should be.
Okay, so in other words, you've got to really start to think about what it is we're going to try and do. I mean, because so many people talk about, you get this wonderful phrase, AI slop, because what you're making doesn't mean anything.
100%. It came out as and marketed. I mean, ChatGPT and Gemini all came out saying, we'll be able to help you do things quicker, write an email faster, create a report quicker, and you've got all this time on your hands. But if we're doing just things quicker and not better, then we're using it for the wrong way, and we're going to start creating these bad habits. And that's where that AI slop comes from. So we need to change the way we start using these, because everybody has access to them. I mean, there's more people using ChatGPT than there is PowerPoint, which is a crazy stat at the moment. So when everybody is using AI and the playing fields are equal now, the real problem is not being left behind anymore, but it's blending in to that AI slop.
Okay, so what do? We think about it differently. Do we need to spend, this is going to sound strange, do we need to spend a bit more time playing around with it? Maybe, in fact, with groups of people to try and work out how to do something with it that no one has yet thought of, to help it make us think of something that no one or no model has yet thought of?
One of the biggest things is not to get into the trap of over-reliance. As soon as we start relying on it to substitute our skills rather than complement them, then essential skills like the critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving, and that emotional intelligence, that starts to decline. So the first thing I would suggest is ask yourself when you're using it, is this just replacing the skill that I would have had, or is it complementing it? Is it helping me do it better or the same quicker? Because if it's the same quicker, then we're not really bettering ourselves or bettering the task. So have a little checkbox that says, is it doing better work? And I think that's the first thing, is just checking that box and then doing it a little bit better. And do the research. If you're struggling a bit and you're not finding that you're doing it better, look for resources on YouTube, do a bit of searching on the platforms like GPT and Gemini to find out how to do it better. Use the tools to find better ways of using them.
I think one of the things that must be happening is that everyone needs to say, we're using AI, right? And so what they need to say is that they're making money from AI. And to do that, they need to point to something. And to point to something, it's more of a rush and a race than anything else.
That's correct. I mean, when we work with businesses, a lot of people say that we need to be AI first. We need to be AI led. I mean, what does that actually mean? What is an AI first company? What is an AI led company? A lot of companies or a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners, they want to make AI the priority, make AI the goal, whereas the AI is the path to the priority. It is the tool that enables you and your people to get to that goal and to create a better goal more efficiently. So it shouldn't be a race to get there. It shouldn't be a race at all. It should be a, how do we use it to do and get to better goals? The technology is going to be there forever. It's going to keep on evolving. So find something that works for your team, settle in, and start using it in the correct way.
Keegan DaCosta, thanks very much indeed. AI utilization specialist from Too Many Robots. Quite a lot to think about there, actually, in terms of what do you want to use AI for? What is the end game rather than just, oh, look, I used AI?
The Money Show.
Consumer Ninja.
So I know that you will have your phone with you wherever you go and almost whatever you do. Sometimes even if you go for a private 5 minutes, you take it away with you. But one of the things that you do on your phone is your banking. You move money around. You speak to people. I was messing around for various reasons on the SARS website today and I couldn't do anything until I'd looked at my phone. And this is because of the one-time PIN. What happens if the wrong person gets hold of your phone? Wendy Nola is our consumer ninja. Wendy Nola, good evening. This happened to someone who got in touch with you. What happened?
Okay, very sad story. Noah Dunez, an F&B client, he went kite surfing, Dolphin Beach in the Cape, and he left in his locked car in the parking lot his bank cards, driver's license, and cell phone. And when he came back from his lovely kite surfing, he found that they were gone. And he immediately rushed home, used his wife's phone to report the fraud to F&B. He logged on online in the hopes of they hadn't already accessed his accounts. But his worst fears materialized, as he put it. They had cleaned out all my accounts within an hour after I went kite surfing. So he really did make things quite easy for them. With the timing and, leaving the fraud starter kit in his car. Not to victim blame, but that, is how it happened. And the issue here is, he said, he wanted to know how it happened. Did they tap? But no, there are limits on transactions. These were large transactions, Stephen. A total of 118,000 Rand, most of them to betting sites. And it turns out that this is an issue relating to what he says is a default setting on many latest smartphones, is that even if your phone's locked across the screen, your locked screen will come the one-time password that your bank sends to you via SMS and any other SMS.
So basically what happened is that he was, from what the bank was getting, from the way their systems had been set up, they were getting the information they needed for the transaction.
Yes, exactly. So, and he was saying, well, the systems are to blame, and he protested, and eventually the bank offered him a goodwill amount, and he said, but on condition that he doesn't talk about the issue. He called it a gagging of the 10% of his losses they were offering him, and he said, no, I want to talk about this rather.
So they were going to give him money if he stayed quiet?
We'll give him money on condition
Come
that
on,
he stayed
FNB,
quiet.
what's the story here?
Most of the banks do that.
Yeah.
I deal with a lot of these cases, and which is frustrating. But anyway, he said, no, I don't want your 10%. I want to warn people about this. So, as he says, because these scrolling messages are a standard function on most smartphones. So I did go to ABSA and I say, what is your defense here? Are you saying that you can't control the default setting on some people's phone? And they said yes, pretty much. And then my next question was, well, do you warn your customers to disable that functionality in order to protect their bank accounts? And they said yes, we are constantly promoting secure digital practices on our T's and C's and our broader security awareness. And you'll see they and other banks will send you on the apps themselves. You go in and they tell you what not to do. Okay. But yeah, they say that this isn't the only way they send one-time PINs. They do it in real time on the app, and we've all experienced this with our own banks, I think. But they do the SMS sending as a default. And that is triggered if there are the app notification times out or whatever. So
it also SMS almost always works. Are they going to change it? Are they going to make any changes?
No, they're not going to make any changes. That's, as I say, it's a fallback mechanism, and their advice is that you should most definitely disable message previews on locked screens where possible. And that's really what I want to share with our listeners this evening, Stephen, is that if you haven't done it already, you should most definitely do that. And I think the question that most people might be thinking is, well, how did they get his banking details and everything else? Well, they had his cards, but our account details are all through data breaches out there. What they need are our one-time pins. So they either phone us and trick us into giving them, or they get lucky. If they get a phone in hand and this SMS scrolling thing on locked device is not disabled, then it's delivered to them.
But they still have to, in the space of an hour in this case, manage to match the phone to an account number.
Yeah.
That's quite astonishing.
Isn't it? And it'll tell you something about the cleverness, for want of a better word, of the bank fraudsters and how they've evolved. And the banks are playing this catch-up game constantly, trying to prevent it.
It also explains other things. The last time my phone was stolen, which was a couple of years ago, I was out cycling. I asked someone to phone my wife. She phoned the bank. And before she had just said, my husband's phone has been stolen, before she finished the sentence, the person said, we've closed the bank account. It will require your ID to come back. So nothing will go.
Okay, that's interesting. Were they alerted by strange activity?
No. Well, they as she said it.
Oh, I
as
see.
she said it,
And
they were like, and so it does show you that they clearly want to know that this happens.
Yes, and I'll tell you why they do it so quickly. Is that the banking ombudsman, or the banking division, or the NFO, as it's now called, they will hold the bank liable for any losses that happen from the time that you report it.
Yeah. Okay. So from that moment, it's their problem.
So you have to report it quickly. And this poor chap was kite surfing, so the fraudsters got lucky there.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously they were able to do it. And then the advice is, the moment that something happens, you need to tell the bank.
Yeah. And unfortunately, if your phone's gone, that's a problem. But, do it as soon as possible, knowing that everything that happens after that's whipped out of your account is for the banks to absorb and pay you back.
You need to get the young person in your family, spend some time on your settings, your main phone settings, to get rid of the notifications. Wendy Nola, Consumer Ninja, thanks very much indeed.
702. Stephen is on X
at Stephen Grootes.
On the next Money Show, Keith Van Sale, co-founder and partner at Knife Capital, a venture capital firm, joins us as the headmaster of our weekly investment school. He'll look at the pros and cons of investing in unlisted companies. The IDC CEO, Mamakhoshi Lekete, delivers her maiden results as the company's new boss. Impala Platinum releasing its annual financial statements. Their CEO, Nico Muller, will take us through those figures and the state of the mining sector in general. Also, analysis of all the top business news of the day.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
Well, one of the great things about speaking to shapeshifters is so many of them have started something new, and many of them come from a background sort of related to what they were starting, but they saw a gap, they saw something new, or they were just frustrated with what they were doing, frustrated with how things were, thought things could be better. And I think one of those people, we'll let him speak for himself, is Tim Akinnusi. He is the co-founder and CEO at MortgageMarket. Tim, good evening. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us and be our shapeshifter this evening.
Good evening, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners, and thanks for having me back.
You worked in corporates for quite a long time, and the sort of story goes you found yourself a little bit frustrated. So you had good jobs, you're doing interesting things, you're doing, I'm presuming, not badly paid things, Tim, and yet you found yourself quite frustrated. What was frustrating you?
Yeah, Stephen, I found myself in an industry that I fell in love with, the idea of making home ownership a possibility for many South Africans. And I just felt that the industry was not as transparent enough. It wasn't as accessible enough for the average South African. And so it wasn't an easy decision to, leave the trappings of a corporate career to pursue this venture. But I knew that if I didn't do it, I would someday be sitting in my chair, regretting that I didn't make my mark when I saw the opportunity. And so being able to launch a marketplace platform that effectively enabled many South Africans today to be able to get access to the best home loan deals and to do that with a great deal of convenience, transparency, and also to get rewarded in the form of a cashback amount just for self-serving that was really the mission. And today we sit here 5 years later. We celebrated our 5th birthday. And I'm really glad that I took that decision to take a leap of faith.
The sort of original insight, I mean, did it come from a frustration? Did it just come from this could be done better? Did it just come from, a week of I don't know, long showers or long walks or something where you suddenly, at the end of the week it was fully formed? Or did it take quite a long time? I mean, sometimes people do have a kind of flash of insight and you sort of walk away from that insight and you actually know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, Stephen, it was a bit of both. I started out, I was headhunted to go back to Nedbank to start a channel called Home Loans Digital Channels. And essentially the idea was Nedbank at that stage had lost just over $1.5 billion in the global financial crisis. This was back in 2011. And so the idea was that they wanted to self-originate clients through their website. And so we built out this capability in terms of the front end and the value proposition around being able to get a bond within a couple of hours. And at that stage, the average turnaround time to get a bond was probably about a week and a half. And so I started out and built that channel out. And surprisingly, it was at the time when the internet was becoming a lot more accessible and pervasive. And that took off. It did very well. I was promoted onto the Exco and had a great career at Nedbank. And then I moved over to ABSA, and it was at that stage that I felt that the timing was right to say, if that idea could work for one bank, where a single application could be made to a bank for a home loan, then why not that same single application to a multitude of banks in the form of a marketplace? And so that was really the idea to do that. And nobody had done it locally. We had seen some versions of that internationally. And I felt that if I didn't take that leap of faith to do it, somebody else would. And, capture a market, or at least move the market in a way that made it a lot more accessible and transformative. And that was the birth of MortgageMarket.
It's one thing to have the idea, to work out a little bit of it, but to kind of get it going, you generally need money from somewhere, and you also need customers from somewhere. So the banks had to agree first, really.
Absolutely. I had to bootstrap this, so I put a lot of my own money up front and got this to a stage where it was a working prototype, and then launched it in 2020, and that was quite a scary thing, because shortly after we launched, 2 months later, we had COVID. And so my grand idea is about doing some advertising and reaching out to people just went out the window. And so I had to pivot and launch a few other quality enhancements to the whole technology, which was the idea of people getting pre-approved and understanding what they could afford prior to making the application for a full home loan. And so by launching that allowed us to get new customers in, because people had time on their hands. They weren't in a position to go out to view homes, but they could certainly ready themselves. And so we did that for 6 months and got picked up by a VC who made an investment in us at a very critical stage in our business. And from there, we've just continued to, plug away at this mission. And today we have a platform that is actually a software service as well. So we've enhanced it to the extent that it's now a mortgage as a service, and we've white labeled our entire technology to give that to any institution or anyone who has an interest in home loans to be able to have their own marketplace. And that's been the birth of Easy Mortgages, which has been a partnership with Easy Equities, MTN, and quite recently Take a Lot Home Loan Hub that launched about 4 days ago.
It must have been very scary to sort of be starting and then the pandemic comes down. Looking back, the pandemic did make us think about things in different ways. It did mean we were at home a lot more, idly looking around, wondering if maybe I could afford something better. Do you think maybe, I'm not a chance going to say that it was a good thing, but looking back, do you think it did have an impact in maybe just helping things along a little bit, very strangely?
I think so, very strangely. You're actually right about that, because it made everybody appreciate the value of their house, right? Because we were all locked down. We needed space. Our homes became our entertainment areas, our workspace, our sense of zen. And so people started valuing their properties a lot more. And that brought about some pent-up demand. There was also some immigration. So areas where people never thought that they would be buying property all of a sudden became quite popular, i.e. the Western Cape. And so I think it made property a lot more relevant than it ever was. And it drove the idea that people could start making better investments in their own homes rather than renting. But unfortunately, that also came with another side to it, which was that, the pandemic brought about a lot more, call it loss of jobs, meant that people didn't have the ability to afford these homes. And that is the effect that we've seen played out over the last couple of years now, where people are renting, and now interest rates are coming down, and that means more people can get back into the market, except a lot of their credit is impaired. And so it's been both a blessing and a curse, but I think overall, more people are aware of the importance of keeping their credit in good shape, and also the importance of having long-term assets such as their homes.
There's, well, let me put it to you like this. As a sort of outsider to the space, to the fintech space, it seems to me there's been a huge amount of innovation in South Africa. Now, I realize this is, modeling, this is following other trends in other places. Do you think there is anything about South Africa that makes us innovate differently or makes us very fast to adopt? We do have, and I mean all the surveys have shown this, we do have a very advanced financial sector which must help. And for all of the talk about people who don't have enough data, I do actually think we're very data savvy. I mean, there are plenty of surveys that show that South Africans spend sort of more time on WhatsApp and online generally than many other places. I think there are important reasons for that. Let me put this in, let me sort of sum up my question. Is South Africa a good place to be a fintech innovator? I suppose is what I'm really asking a fintech innovator.
Yeah, I think it is. To be honest with you, the amount of support and the challenges that we face in the sector, which has been a lack of transformation, both in terms of technology and both in terms of the profile of the people that play in the space, has meant that there is opportunity if you have a good product, if you're solving a problem, you will get the support. And that's why we've been around for the last 5 years, because our product has found a lot of fertile ground amongst first-time home buyers, amongst property developers, and also just industry participants who are looking for a much more efficient way of doing things and a lot more convenience and better value. And I think that we are probably not taking enough chances and enough risk on ourselves to be able to innovate and move our industries forward, And I can certainly say that there is still a lot more innovation to come in this space, because we haven't seen much change, over the last 20 years in the real estate sector. We've seen much of the same old, and that's been an opportunity for us, and we want to continue to exploit that and make things a lot more accessible for the average South African. And, credit still seems to be the challenge. There's a lot more private credit going around, and I think that's potentially becoming challenging in the long term. A lot of people taking out payday loans, stuff that is not necessarily in their best interest long term, but it does serve them in the short term. And I think that could be something that could derail a lot of the progress in terms of creating more liquidity for the average consumer. But, businesses like ours are focused on saying people need to be much more focused on taking out long-term debt, because that will better serve them. And buying your own house early right now is a benefit to you, not only in the short term because you get the utility value, but in the long term because you get the asset value.
I'm smiling as you speak, Tim, because our personal finance guru, Warren Ingram, likes to debate this question, whether you should rent or whether you should buy.
I would say buy. Land is not, they're not making any more land. It's become a lot more expensive to buy because, the input cost into building is also going up. So things that are linked to inflation go into property. And so whilst you have the opportunity to purchase property because there are not a lot of good quality buyers out there, you should take advantage of that. And also you can get a lot of good bargains today because the market is not very buoyant. So if you're buying for investment or a first-time home buyer for your primary residence, now is really the best time to buy as interest rates are ticking down.
It's also because Joburg's a mess. Tim Akinnusi is our shapeshifter this evening. He's the co-founder and CEO at MortgageMarket. You're with The Money Show. It's 9 minutes to 8.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud sponsor of the SARA Rail Conference 2025, powering progress, connecting economies.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
6 minutes to 8 the time. Tim Akinnusi is our shapeshifter this evening, co-founder and CEO at MortgageMarket. And Tim, you were talking about the space for innovation in South Africa. Do you think that space is still there? I mean, please try and give us an answer that doesn't include the letters A and I in it if you can. But do you think that there is going to be space actually for a while for people like you who create something that is genuinely new? Or do you think that innovation is actually going to become a lot more expensive and difficult to scale up, which means only the big people get to do it?
Stephen, I think, honestly, innovation is well and alive. If I think about, just to give an example, in the US, in the real estate context, right, there are two types of real estate agents. One is a sell-side real estate agent and a buy-side real estate agent, which means that you have the ability as a potential buyer to have your own real estate agent negotiate on your behalf, right? And in South Africa, we only have sell-side real estate agents who basically are appointed by the sellers, and they are the ones that control the transaction. And I think that the innovation that will soon come into South Africa is buy-side real estate agents that are acting on behalf of the buyers and are acting in the buyer's best interest in a transaction with a potential seller. And that is the one part that I think we can still innovate. Hint, we are likely to go into that space fairly soon because we have a bunch of buyers that we have pre-approved over the last 5 years. In fact, we've pre-approved north of 45,000 clients who've helped them get access to understanding how ready they are to purchase property. And so with the launch of our mortgage as a service, we're getting access to a lot more potential buyers who are pre-approving themselves. And these buyers are going to need access to where to go to get a property. And so that's where we think the innovation is going to come from, is the ability to have estate agents or originators act on behalf of the buyer as opposed to the seller. And in a market that's tough like this and people want to continue to earn, they need to be able to double up on their skill sets and be in a position to, to provide buy-side real estate support to potential buyers.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that, Tim. I'm going to watch that very closely. Someone who is in a corporate, maybe feeling a bit stuck, feels they have an idea. Now, in your case, your idea's worked out, right? What's your advice to them? How do they test their idea? How do they test whether they can sort of do what you've done and sort of go out on their own and get involved in innovation in the way that you have? I mean, I think that a lot of people, often I think probably on a Friday afternoon are quite frustrated with their job. They think they can do better. How do you know?
See, that's a really good question you've asked, because I often find myself in a position where I wonder how many people grasp the idea that your job gives you two key opportunities. One is the ability to earn money now, and secondly is the ability to build a career. And the building the career is about the networks that you make, your understanding of the industry that you are, that your job is situated, and being in a position to say, where are the gaps? What opportunity is my company not fulfilling today? And if you feel that that's a big enough size, then I'd love to urge every corporate executive out there or employee out there to say, take a chance on yourself and jump in to fill that gap because nobody's going to fill it. And you are the one that you've been waiting for. So effectively, you've got to have some courage. You've got to be prepared, and you've got to be willing to take some chances. Yes, it did. I'm still in it. I haven't yet exited the entrepreneurial world, but it's been worthwhile. And that's the way you move the dial in any industry. And we see too many examples of that in North America, where lots of Harvard, Stanford grads, they don't go back to jobs. They start things. They start and they build things to move their industry forward. And unfortunately, we don't see too many examples of that in South Africa, but I do believe that the opportunity is there.
Tim, it's been great to talk to you today. Thank you very much indeed. Tim Akinnusi, the co-founder and CEO at MortgageMarket, your shapeshifter this evening on The Money Show.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, proud sponsor of the SARA Rail Conference 2025, powering progress, connecting economies.
Well, it's a quick look at the US and still waiting for NVIDIA results. The Dow Jones is up 0.31%. The Nasdaq is up 0.15%. The S&P 500 is up 0.22%. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been quite a difficult day in so many ways because of the passing of Tiri Madea. And on one level, though, it's also been a relief to talk to you about other things. And I'm sure you've had that sort of quite strange feeling about grief and life as you go through it. My advice, if I have any at all to give, is to tell the people in your life that you love them, to be honest in front of them, and to not and do not hide how you feel from them, no matter what it may be. For what it's worth, that would be the Money Show advice to you. We're back again tomorrow. Good evening. Aubrey's next. It's 8 o'clock.